Hi everyone, welcome back to our Couple with Carole. Hope you're doing alright. You might think we're in a bit of an interesting position today. That is because we're having a nice little snuggle. I'm here with my friend Nicola Hok, and I tend to have two giant ginger animals. I've got one underneath here, so I haven't got some strange growth, bit of an odd one. And then I have another dog here, so we're having a full-on snuggle today. So just thought I'd better explain that in case you wonder what on earth is going on with all that. Anyway, so I just thought I'd grab Nicola. Nicola's staying with me this week, and I'm really chuffed to introduce her to you. She's called Nicola Hok, and we worked out this weekend that we've been 18 years. 18 years.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Time flies. Time blooming flies. So Nicola actually is, I'm going to get to tell you a little bit more about her now, but she, from the point of view of me, was my human Bowen teacher. So she taught me human Bowen. So I've asked her to have a little bit of a chat with us today, talking about a few points that you guys know are really dear to my heart. Nicola, tell me a little bit about you.
Well, where to start? I really can't believe it's 18 years. It is mad.
It felt like, I didn't believe it when we looked at that. I was like, what the heck? I was like, no, 10 years maybe.
Yeah. So yes, I've been a therapist for probably 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's quite scary. And I really fell into it by mistake.
Oh, you can tell us a little bit more about that in a moment. Or now.
Yeah, do it chronologically.
Let's go for it.
Easier. So way back in 1986, my amazing mum decided that she wanted to do reflexology, but she didn't want to go on her own. So I went with her, and in those days a reflexology course was 3 weekends.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's actually got longer with reflexology.
Yeah, but now they have AMP and stuff in with the reflexology.
Okay.
Like when I originally learnt Bowen, you got the whole lot in 4 days, and then Ozzy and Elaine came back over from Australia a year later, and everybody got their certificate.
That's just mental. 4 days.
Yep.
My brain wouldn't have coped with that at all.
No, but that's partly why I have spent quite a lot of time, or did spend quite a lot of time, thrashing out with the rest of the International Bowen Committee once I'd been invited by Ozzy and Elaine to become an instructor, which was back in '97. Thrashing out actually how better to teach it. So that's why it is now taught the way it is. And it's had a couple of incarnations, you know, en route. But it's really important actually that you don't get overloaded with it. So the structure we have now is great.
It's funny, isn't it? So standards of training and teaching is a big thing. Any of you that know me know I was involved in the K9 standards of training when DEFRA and RCVS were looking at standards, and it pretty much sent me to an asylum. So you guys did all that before me because the human world's slightly different. So that must have been fun.
Yes, is that the word I would use for it? It was interesting, and I think it is better. I mean, it's like, you know, when I first trained in Bowen, the manual was coloured pages. I actually still have my manual from 1993, which is
right at the beginning of the whole fascia world. That's amazing, isn't it?
Absolutely. So I was on the first course that Ozzy and Elaine, actually the second course, which was 2 days after the first course, back in 1993. But you know, the first page was orange. The first 2 pages were orange. One had writing on it and some arrows and like a stick man. And then the second page was blue, almost royal blue. The third page was pink, I think. Then a knee procedure, which was yellow. How bizarre is it, the things that we...
How do you remember that? Yeah, you're crazy.
Well, I'm a visual person, so for me, I can still see the page. first page, 2 pages, almost the colour of your top.
There you go. It was meant to be.
Absolutely.
Anyway, tell me a little bit more about you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I got distracted.
That's
I'm
all right.
not very good at talking about me, you know that.
Oh no, come on. I'm here to keep you towed to the line.
Yes. So,
which, if anyone knows Nicola, knows how difficult that can be.
Damn, may I go a little bit off on a tangent? Apart from when I'm teaching, when I'm absolutely on the button.
Feisty fine teacher.
So I did a basic massage course, which, you know, was like 2 days in those days. And then I was giving a friend a massage and my thumbs kept stopping. And I went to try and have some acupuncture. This is probably, I don't know, 1989, something like that. And I couldn't get an appointment. But somebody said, ooh, try shiatsu. I'd never even heard of shiatsu. So I went and I had this appointment and I realised that what I'd been doing to this friend was essentially shiatsu. So I thought, well, if I'm doing it intuitively, probably I ought to learn it. So that set me off on a 3-year shiatsu training. So I qualified from that in 93. And then Mum had met somebody called Izzy Saunders at a holistic fair, and Izzy was doing Bowen. She was the only Bowen practitioner in the UK. And Mum said, well, you know, was talking to her about it because there are these weird 2-minute breaks. I don't know if your guys know.
Some of them will know Bowen, some of them might not. Okay.
So the key thing with Bowen is that there are mandatory minimum 2-minute breaks between the moves, and actually the pauses are fundamental. They're almost the most important bit, apart from doing very little.
So most of you, especially if you're Malters, will hear me have used the language
less is more.
Yes, less is more. Powers in the pause is another one. And then, of course, we talk about being in charge of the level of compression. So in similar terms to Bowen, that's about working very gentle and kind to yourself rather than being a bulldozer like so often we think we need to be. So I've given Nick a cup of tea with tea leaves in, so they're actually big leaves in, so that's going to be, you're right there.
I'm fine. It was lucky it didn't get stuck and I ended up with a green splodge in the middle of my bottom lip.
Perfectly normal.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
So you found Bowen.
So I found Bowen, and on day 1 I thought it was a complete load of twaddle.
Yes.
On day 2 I picked my clothes up and I hung them very neatly in a heap on the floor, as you do, if you're me. And the top 5 or 6 vertebrae in my neck all went pop, 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 pop. And I thought, oh, that's weird. And walking to college that morning, my left shoulder didn't go numb for the first time in years following a car crash. So that was super interesting. By the end of day 3, I was kind of blown away by it. So I worked hard. I was lucky enough that Izzy was going to spend some time in the UK, and I spent quite a lot of time with her and assisted her on her training courses. I've got hours certificates for 109 hours, which when you only get 7 hours a day is quite a lot of training. And then Ozzy invited me to become an instructor. So I started teaching in 1998. I couldn't do it in 97 because I was having chemo and crap. Which actually, again, really thanks to Bowen that I'm still here. And the rest, as they say, is history. And we're now, long down the line. I teach all the courses. I examine students and taught all over the place, really. Norway, Spain. Used it all over the world. South America, South Africa, Tanzania.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing, isn't it? So it is something that travels with you, I guess. Is the
Yes, because all I need is my hands. I don't need any oil. I don't need any props. You can do it anywhere. I've done it sat on the side of the road in Thailand. I've done it in Chile. I've done it halfway up a hill in the Lake District. I mean, you know,
I get you. Yeah.
all over.
But we can still travel with our balls, I hasten to add, guys. So I do travel with our balls. So a little
Okay.
tiny ball, yeah.
Oh, the melt balls.
Yes, you can't do without your melt balls. So obviously a lot of these guys will be melters, and the thing of melt is teaching them to be their own therapists in a way that they don't have to do the 30 years of understanding and landing with the knowledge.
Yeah.
So give me just a very brief rundown of the other modalities that you work with, and then I really want us to discuss the less is more powers, and maybe a bit about power in the pause and the being gentle
Okay.
compression. I think that's the thing.
So I do a couple of other things. I do something called NST, which is neurostructural integration technique, which is based on Tom Bowen's work, but it's completely different. It has a different philosophy. They shouldn't be mixed. I do Emmett, which is Ross Emmett's stuff, which again, a lot of people think is like Bowen, and it isn't. It is predominantly...
It's a different reaction, yeah.
It is, but also with Bowen there are moves. With Emmett it is predominantly holding points. So it's much more like trigger point, except it's incredibly gentle and it's wonderfully effective. So I do those. Those are really the physical things I do. I do a couple of energy psychology techniques. So I do EmoTrance, which stands for emotional transformation, and kind of does what it says on the tin. There's no trance involved.
Probably quite important to say that, because
Yeah,
it kind
it
of
is.
makes you
It
seem
sounds
like
a bit woo-woo.
Yeah.
But it's not. And then I do something called Ask and Receive, which is using kinesiology techniques and 5 sentences repeat after me. But it finds the trauma in the body, and if there is one, again, and we don't need to know what it is, it still releases it. So it's really safe for the client. So I love that. And then I do something called Super Connect, which is working with a pendulum and charts, which also can be done completely remotely, but I like to do it with people on Zoom, because then I don't have to write a report.
Handy.
Yes. Whereas Mum she's amazing at it, but she endlessly has to write reports for people, because that's how she likes to work. But I prefer to do it with people. They can make the notes.
So, bringing you in, is that everything? She's done loads.
No. And then I'm also really keen on core nutrition. I'm not a nutritional therapist. However, I came across a range of supplements that have absolutely transformed my life. I was flat as a pancake. Now I have a life. Now I can live. And it took me from, going on holiday and sleeping for 2 weeks, literally not even reading a book, to being out and partying, which is, significantly different, dancing till 6 in the morning. And also gut health. And that really is kind of the missing link. It's kind of the Carlsberg of therapies. Do you remember that advert? Carlsberg reaches the parts other beers cannot reach.
Yes.
And the gut side and the foundational nutrition is really important. The statistics around nutrition are horrifying. Some people have less than 5 portions of fruit and veg a week. I know.
And the amount of fibres they bring in and things like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And just knowing when you are bringing in enough fibre, how your body just functions completely different. Just that on its own, let alone going down the paths that I know you take people, it can be quite phenomenal, can't it?
It can be quite phenomenal, but there's little things that people can do, and the company I work with are more anal than I am about testing and about raw ingredients, and they reverse test every batch, and everything tastes nice, which is kind of key, because if it tastes like crap, you're not going to take it anyway, and then it's just going to sit in your cupboard, and that doesn't do your body any good either, because
Exactly.
So I love that side of it, and I love seeing the transformations of people who once they start putting quality nutrition. We have a real problem in this country actually, because most people either don't or can't eat organic. But even if you do, if there isn't the nutrition in the soil, it's not going to be in the food.
No.
So if it's not in the soil, you're not going to get it anyway. So there really is a gap now, and it's actually really important that people do take supplements on some level just to get what they need, because it's not in the diet.
It's interesting, isn't it? I kind of don't want to go too far down the nutrition pathway.
All I'm going to say.
No, but what it actually, in terms of the fact that, so there is a saying, so this is quite contentious, but I'm in your camp because I'm exactly the same. I do my multiple different things that I bring to the table. So as a therapist, I think the thing is we all find the modalities that we absolutely love, and you guys all know what I love. But you do tend to, once you start on this pathway, and I think, Nicola, you and I
both... It's a journey.
Yeah, it's a journey. And also we're dealing with our own bodies as well as the people that we look after. So you tend to find other things. And I think, so some of you guys would have seen my videos around the holistic wheel of health. So you can see that, you know, nutrition is a piece of that pie, emotional balance, intelligence, whatever you want to call it. Obviously spiritual well-being, everything becomes a big part.
And sleep,
you know, your health. Oh well, these guys will know that I give them lots of jip about their crazy circadian rhythms and sleeping at interesting times of the day. So yes, you know who you are. So yes, it's an interesting thing, isn't it? So it is a case that you kind of find your whole package, and I mean, because you've been doing it so long, you've got a number of different strings to your bow.
Yeah.
And I kind of, you can remind me of this as well, guys, and you. I've decided I'm stopping learning new things, so I might carry on. Yes. So I might carry carry on with the depth of what it is that I do, but I'm not going to be adding any more modalities to my own plan. But you guys know that I work with nutrition as well, and I do believe in gut health is so important. So it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think there is that thought when people go to a therapist, I wonder if you can speak to this a little bit, where people think that one therapist is going to be the magic thing that creates the whole change.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting one, that, isn't it?
It is, because I really see the therapist's role as a catalyst.
Yes.
The therapist is really a catalyst, and it's also a two-way street. A lot of people, when they go to the doctor, they want a pill for an ill. And actually, it's going to sound contentious as well.
They're used to that with me, so don't worry.
So a pill can actually, if you're already in self-healing, it can actually take you out of healing and stop the process.
It's tricky, isn't it?
So it's a really tricky one. Now, there are some things that medication is required for, and there are times when you need emergency medicine, but it should be emergency medicine. It shouldn't just be, you know, I don't feel great, I'm going to the quack. So I think there's that side of it. I also think that people have to start taking responsibility for their own health, which we're very bad at in the UK because of the NHS.
I know, isn't that
and that's really sad.
Yeah, it's really sad, and I think that's a big part, isn't it, of what I think we do together. Me and my clients is starting to own it themselves, and actually it kind of, you know, we're not an alternative. That's really important to say. We're complementary to the NHS. It's all part of a big team.
Well,
that's
are
the
we
way
complementary to them, or are they actually complementary to
indeed.
Us?
It kind of depends on the client's viewpoint.
Alternative.
It's definitely not alternative.
Because actually we were there before they were.
Told you she was feisty.
Well, it's true.
I know.
You know, you can go back to people being put on ducking schools and burnt at the stake as witches and all the rest of it. Actually, they were probably just herbalists.
Yes, I know.
You know?
I know. But it's very important that we talk about being complementary too.
Yes, totally.
Unfortunately, you know, they are the power, unfortunately, nowadays. So,
They are, but it's also about getting people to shift their mind to think complementary, look after yourself, find solutions for yourself, help yourself. Don't just go running to the doctor expecting a solution, because doctors only look at the symptoms anyway. They never look at the cause, and actually if you don't get to the root of the matter, you're screwed.
you're just in a cycle.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Wow. I think that's enough for a podcast on itself, isn't it, really? So I think
We can do another one if
we
you
can do
like.
another one. So I think the thing is the thing to take from there is owning your own health. And I think a lot of people that get to me are in a level of health where they pretty much have given up hope at that point, and they are reliant on you know, it might be another therapist, it might be me. You know, I tried not to stop that, not to create that, but
that's what's good about your
reliant on a
melt
GP.
balls,
Because
because
it's ownership.
everybody can have their melt balls, and even if they do 2 minutes, 5 minutes in the morning,
minutes, yeah, it's going to do something.
yeah.
It's going to
Note to self.
I know. I did give her a good kick yesterday in a very gentle, holistic way.
I've only done one class with you, and it was about 5 years ago.
Yeah,
I
don't know. Long
Pre
time
the
ago.
shit show. I was impressed enough that I bought some melt balls.
Guess where they lived?
I'm known as the bag lady. I have a lot of bags with a lot of crap in them, but I have found them now. And actually, just those few minutes that we did yesterday made a difference. So, you know, if people have got your melt balls, then actually they can empower themselves, and you make it a habit with your first cup of tea in the morning, or cup of hot water, or whatever it is you.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know.
And I think that's it. It's about giving people, either by understanding their nutrition, how they can help themselves nutritionally.
Yeah.
You know, and we all need therapists. I still see therapists.
And absolutely, and we all need tools. You know,
huge. So let's that brings us quite nicely. I know we perhaps haven't talked about you enough yet, but let's just talk
I don't know.
That's probably enough for you. You hate it, don't you? So let's talk a little bit then about the fact. So we've kind of cut into the fact that it is a whole package. There are many layers to taking care of yourself. So you've got, you know, your melt, or your Bowen, or your walking, or sitting in sunlight, or your supplements, or your nutrition, or your emotional mental health tools, whichever they are. Yeah?
Absolutely, and sorting your sleep out, and all of those things. I have a really good sleep meditation, actually.
Oh, maybe we can record it. Perhaps we should record it.
I did. Well, it's a visualization, so I didn't come up with it. It's part of the Silver method, but I've created it and put it on a one-page piece of paper, so we can attach that as a download for people if you like.
Let's share that. Okay, we'll come up with that.
And then you read it. Once you've got it in your head, you just do it. But we won't talk about it now because
tangents.
I'll start yawning.
Okay,
no,
stop.
I will fall asleep.
Okay, cool.
If I go through it and tell you how to do it, I will nod off.
Okay, everybody wants
Phenomenal.
that right now. Okay, cool. So let's bring it back in. Talk to me a little bit. So obviously Nicola, working with fascia, and she will have been one of the first people to approach fascia. As you all know, it's all very trendy, bendy, wendy now, but which is a bit annoying, isn't it? Really, in a way. It's good and annoying. It's good and annoying, isn't it?
It's great that there is becoming more awareness of it and the importance of it. So I think it's good on the whole.
Except for when you walk into a place and they've got those thunder blasters that beat the crap out of connective tissue, and then you just want to cry. And they go, "We do the same work as you."
Oh, geez.
Sorry, don't want to hurt you.
No,
It just makes you cry. Or you can buy this at home and it will blast your fascia and everything will be fabulous. So let's just talk about.
Really not helpful.
Let's talk about being gentle. I think that's the next thing to talk about on that. So Nicola is known in the Bowen world. I don't know if this is still the case, but in my time, I'm an old sod now, and I've been around a long time myself. But Nicola was known in the Bowen world as probably one of the lightest practitioners around, weren't you really?
Probably, but that's how we were taught, and that was that is how it should be. And the problem is that when you're teaching and demonstrating something,
you have to be clearer.
You have to use more pressure.
Yes.
And you're concentrating on what is coming out of your mouth,
not through your
not what you're feeling through your fingers.
Absolutely.
So the really interesting thing about Bowen is the pressure does vary a bit from client
based on
to
what
client.
you touch.
Absolutely. But people who have come along later than me
Us and or me
and you have come in a bit more heavy, and part of it is because they have been demonstrated on, and so they think that's how it should be because it has not been rammed home, which, you know, that actually the pressure I use when I demonstrate stuff is not the pressure I use in the clinic. And it is really important. You get the breast proprioceptive response at 0.5 of a gram of pressure.
So do you relate that to the eyeball pressure thing then? Because we still talk about that when we talk about starting to melt. Because we talk about the eyeball
most pressure I will use is the amount of pressure you can put on your eyeball.
Wow, the most amount of pressure. Listen to that. That's fascinating, isn't it?
Now, if you stab yourself in the eye, obviously you're not going to use a lot of pressure. But if you actually shut your eye and place your finger and then press, you'll find that you could actually be fairly firm. Now, I say firm because to me that is firm and heavy, and I would never use the same amount that I can press on my eyeball. But as a rule of thumb, you don't want to use any more than you can press on your eyeball.
Isn't that fascinating? So I use that as a starting point with melt. And to try and get people to understand, because of when people begin with the balls, they really think they need to be, you know, they've been told to put a blooming tennis ball in their backs and God knows what else, and all those kind of things. So why do you think, so that's quite interesting. So you're talking about proprioception. So can you talk to that a little bit more? So you've already talked about doing less, I think we were touching on that.
We haven't touched on that.
Massively.
We're really, yes.
So talk to me just anything else you want to say about being light and about receptiveness of the tissue.
I think what you have to remember, I mean, I've had people that actually you get a better response if you work off the body, if you work within the etheric space, within the aura, which I think is fascinating. So there's that to consider. Part of it is that if you use hard pressure, the body is going to put up resistance.
Yeah, absolutely.
And because it puts up resistance, you're not going to get the change. Now, I don't know whether anybody did it with you when you were at school, but you can take corn flour and mix it with water.
Yes.
And we've all seen it on YouTube and Instagram and everywhere. You know, people running across swimming pools filled with corn flour. And because you're putting a sharp, hard pressure, you actually bounce off the top. Whereas if you put your finger in gently, it will sink. So it's the same principle. If you're really gentle and considerate and listening to the body, nothing should ever hurt. If something hurts too much, your body is going to resist, and it's going to put it's almost like having a trampoline there. And you just bounce off it, and you're not going to do any good.
Absolutely.
So it's a waste of everybody's time, effort, and if you're paying a therapist, it's a waste of money as well.
I know, isn't that interesting? So it really is. I think, can you guys notice how much Bowen relates to melt now from how I talk? Isn't that fascinating? So yeah, I think it is about being gentle, and it is about finding that tolerable pressure within your tissue. But it's also allowing for things like the pause, or finding your place of, we call it pressure, don't we? Some people call it a challenge, some people say pressure, depending on what school of Bowen it is. So,
yeah.
So we say challenge, don't we?
Yeah,
we
call it a challenge.
Yeah.
We talk about taking the skin slack. I talk about it being a secret, as in the client shouldn't feel it at all.
Yes.
Because that's how light you have to be.
Yeah.
Then holding the challenge on, which will be no more than you can press on your eyeball. And if you feel resistance, you wait.
It's the power in the pause moment.
Well, there are two, in which case we've got two power in the pauses, because you need to wait for that body to say, actually, okay, I believe she's not going to hurt me, and then you can make the move. But you have to wait for that moment. If somebody's in a huge amount of pain, you know, it's going to take a couple of minutes for that body to get to that. You know, just because they've taken a breath doesn't mean you have to do the move there and then. You can wait. They can continue breathing. We don't want anyone to suffocate.
It's not good for business.
No, that's
not
true.
Not good for business.
But we also, with Bowen, we have, if you like, a second pause after we've done the moves. We pause while the body changes. And that is key. And again, it is a mandatory minimum 2-minute pause.
We have a different view from a dog point of view, but that's another conversation. But
yes, that's true.
Yeah. But
it is a mandatory minimum 2-minute break, and quite often clients will feel sensations which will be very, very subtle.
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes they're really in your face. Yeah, sometimes they're really in your face.
Sometimes they're really in your face, yes.
But I think it's also important to let new clients particularly know that they're quite often subtle, because otherwise, you know, they don't notice and they don't know what a sensation is.
Well, that's the disconnect from body sense.
Totally, because they're all in their head, particularly people who work in the city and stuff. They're just not aware of their bodies. It's absolutely fascinating. So I encourage people not to use a clock for their 2-minute breaks, because they are minimum 2-minute breaks. And a lot of people will come in after 2 minutes and continue. And that's a bit like making a cake and shoving all your ingredients in once, shoving it in the oven and hoping for the best. That ain't going to be a very nice cake. Now, cake is very nice on its own, but you need to cream together the butter and the sugar before you add the eggs. Don't make a lot of cakes, but I know the principle of it. You know, and then once that's together, you can add the flour. But if you do it too quickly and you just chuck it all in a bowl, you're just going to have a mess.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's it, isn't it? And that is a little bit about time, which is another conversation. Sometimes the body just needs time, even if we're talking about time within a session or a treatment. But then sometimes there's the time following a session.
Absolutely.
I mean, I often think that time is, people will, when they're really desperate and really poorly, they'll throw one thing at their bodies and then another thing at their bodies and another thing at their bodies and another thing at their bodies. Particularly I find with my dog clients this is the case, and that's that kind of desperate need to help them.
Yeah.
But actually sometimes I'll only see them as clients if they're prepared to literally take a pause. That doesn't necessarily mean stop doing all of the things
with
they
your
like.
dogs.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I've just thought of
bless
that.
you. But they need to pause because they need to allow time for whatever it is, even if that means waiting to come to me to do what I do, because of the body needs that process time.
But the body after Bowen and after various therapies, the body will change for 4 days. We have documented evidence that the body changes for 4 days.
Okay, so we haven't had this conversation before, so this is quite interesting, because I think it can be many more days than that.
It can, but it changes for a minimum of 4 days.
Okay, that's
and
interesting.
if somebody is pregnant, it will very often be longer than 4 days.
Yeah, I think it can be weeks,
it is
personally.
Really important that you don't have any other treatment within that time frame, minimum of 5 days, even no more Bowen within 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't particularly like treating people if they've had a full body massage like 2 days before. Their fascia is still disruptive, it's still not settled. They'll get a result, but it won't be anything like what they could have had they had a longer gap for the tissue to have settled.
So that's interesting thing. So as a Malta, so what I find in clinic is, so quite a lot of my Malta's Bowen as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now I actually really like malt. It's almost like it's a marinade.
Okay.
Pre and post Bowen. So
right.
Isn't that interesting? So I feel like I say to people, you know, do malt. It's a bit like with Bowen, it's like on the way to hospital have a Bowen, on the way out of hospital have a Bowen. Do you know that's common
absolutely.
sense? So I actually believe that if you come to me having melted, then the Bowen can be more potent, because you've got that fluid flow within the tissue.
I was going to say, but that's because of how melt works, isn't it? Now,
It works in a similar way.
I don't know a lot about melt, but my perception of it from my limited experience, which was the one glass however many years ago, I don't really remember anything about, and the 3 minutes we did last night with only two things we did, 2 points on the feet, is that it really helps hydrate the tissues throughout the body, and it's really important for, if you're having Bowen, for the body to be hydrated.
Yes.
Because it works on a vibration, and it's easier for the vibration to travel if the body is hydrated. So to me, it seems that perhaps melt is actually super helpful. Massive, because it helps hydrate the tissues and keep them hydrated, which means the Bowen is more effective.
Yeah, and absolutely.
It would actually be really interesting to do some research around that, and maybe something like some live blood analysis to see what it's doing on a micro level.
It is fascinating, because that's what I found, is that my melters seem to have really potent Bowen responses, and it's almost like the response from the Bowen can last longer. They keep hold of, whilst the rest of their life might be bringing them back to the challenge that they're living with, that created the situation in the first place. It's like the melt will keep that potency of the fluidity. Bowen. Yeah, so it kind of, they're a really lovely little kind of blend, really, for me. But it is interesting, and I love how the language is around fluidity of tissue and pausing and time and being gentle.
There's a big overlap.
It is. It's huge. So one other thing I wanted to ask you about, because I think it's really useful to talk about. So we're talking about being gentle. We're talking about pausing. But the other thing, I kind of think it sort of relates, well, massively relates, but less is more.
It's super key.
Come on, tell me about that.
And it pains me when I'm teaching a class of people and I ask them what the least they've done is.
Oh my God, it pains me too. Because obviously when I teach canine people, I love them, but it has so changed in the last decade, hasn't it?
Sorry.
Scrap the swear word. We love that. Sorry, you guys all know I've got a washerwoman mouth.
Fiddlesticks.
She's a Londoner too.
Oh God. And they're like, oh, well, just the basics. And I'm like, what do you mean by that? And they're like, well, if they're one school, they'll say page 1, 2 and 3. And if they're the school that I work with, Bowtech, which is the original lot, it'll be BRM's 1, 2 and 3, which is the basic or Bowen relaxation moves, which is lower body, mid body and upper body and neck. And it's like, no! I will quite often do 2 moves for someone on their first treatment. End of story.
Yeah.
Because and this is also why I hate people using a watch and doing their 2 minutes and coming back in too early, because they're not listening to the body. And if the sensations go for more than 10 minutes, you should stop. That body's had enough.
Yeah.
And the person will either feel like shit or the body will throw its toys out the pram and do nothing. You know, it throws its hands up.
I know, isn't it?
And doesn't do anything. And then people say it doesn't work. And it's really sad, because actually it's down to the practitioner.
It is.
But less is more. It is absolutely crucial and fundamental.
I've got a perfect thing that I managed to say. I mean, obviously we live too far away from each other, and I see you about once in a blue moon. So Nicola is not my therapist, but I've got Julia just down the road from me, and Julie, and she is old school as well. She's kind of somewhere in between our 2 dates. Okay. Thank God. And she will sometimes do the left bottom stopper in air, and that will be my whole session.
Yeah.
So that's one move. So that's not even the first paragraph in the first page.
I'm loving her.
She's great. She's very, you'd love her. Yeah, she's proper old school. And I'll be like in a coma, and she'll just go off and carry on gardening and come back and find me later. You know,
when the body calls.
Yeah.
And when she
she's
intuitively
brilliant.
knows that your body has stopped processing.
Yeah.
I go out the room and, you know, do other things. I never use a clock.
No.
Well, I occasionally use a clock just to see how much over the 10 minutes we've gone, if the sensations are going. But basically I work intuitively, and a lot of people get 2 moves or 4 moves, and that'll be it. And you know, when I was out working in the Middle East, somebody came for a treatment, and I think this is a really good example. She'd had, I don't know whether it was a C-section, she'd had some abdominal surgery, and she had this massive scar right across her lower abdomen, this poor lady, and it was pulling, and it was really sore, and she'd had it, you know, I mean, years previously. And I said to her, which if the spa had known probably wouldn't have gone down very well, well, you know, if it really does nothing, then please come back next week anyway, but I won't charge you. Which is, you know, when you're working in a spa and it's actually their money, I really shouldn't have said.
You know, just passport.
But anyway, she could not believe the difference. When she came back, instead of there being a little pot belly hanging over the scar, instead of the scar being really, really tight and pulling the whole time, didn't do any scar work. I did the first 2 Bowen moves, and it was absolutely transformational. And I love the fact that I've been doing this for over 30 years. I've been teaching it, training all the therapists for over 25 years.
Some of us still do it as a job rather than did the training and then did nothing.
Yes.
You've got quite high stats for that, haven't you? People that actually go on to make it a living.
The majority of people that I train continue. Most of the people that have been on the Bowen Association UK committee over the years have been my students.
Yeah, we kind of do our job.
I have a high proportion, I think probably higher than most people. And I don't know why it is. I don't know whether it's because I'm in your face enthusiastic, or because
you're
a
good. I think for me, if I remember, I think the thing about your training is that you are quite pedantic about standards in a nice possible way.
I'm quite anal.
You are, yeah. Okay, she said that, not me. That's what I was trying not to say. But yeah, you're incredibly anal, and so you're very precise.
I want people to get it right.
Yeah, and I think then, of course, because of that slightly tough start in studying with you, it can be tough. You're a tough cookie.
I'm less tough than I was.
I know. You soft socks now. It happens.
I'm not soft socks compared to some people.
I was going to say it hasn't.
No,
I'm still grumpier. But
I am still pedantic about how the work is done, but I think
you don't growl anymore.
Yeah, somebody did say to me, somebody sitting not very far away from here. In fact, I think not only you has said to me that I was quite scary.
Yeah, you have.
And I had no idea I was scary.
Well, you never scared me because we got on straight away. But yes,
I think you're pretty, you know, fear-proof, bomb-proof.
Pretty bomb-proof. But yes.
But I think some people were quite scared of me, which I'm really sorry about.
But you did
but
make
equally
bloody
grow
good
a pair and
practitioners.
deal with it.
Yeah, no, you did
absolutely.
make good. I mean, that sounds awful because I'm one of them, so that's really arrogant.
One of the biggest compliments somebody ever paid me was somebody who had no prior bodywork experience at all, and she felt that it didn't matter who came into her clinic or what they came in with, even if she'd never heard of it. She had the confidence to help that person and to give a relevant treatment for them.
Brilliant.
You know, and you go and Google in the 2-minute breaks
what
it is you're dealing with.
What's going on?
But she felt confident to do that, and actually that was really special for me because it is about giving people the confidence. So that's good, even if I was scary.
And the confidence is really hard. Let's just bring it back to what we wanted to cover. To dare to do less is more.
Absolutely.
And work really gently.
Yeah.
And to pause and do nothing in those minutes that you're being paid as a practitioner.
Yes.
And say, actually, do you know what? That's enough now. I think we're going to stop.
And I think people panic. I think that they are being paid. Well, they forget that they are being paid for the therapist's expertise. They're not being paid per move.
I know.
You know, and when I was working in the Middle East, they were charging the equivalent of 200 quid for a session with me. You've got to have quite a lot of confidence to do 2 moves for that sort of money.
Quid.
Yeah, and that's going back 6 or 8 years.
Wow.
It's not what I got, but it's what they were charging for me. You know, whereas a lot of people think that, oh my God, they're paying me that sort of money, I better do enough, you know, and they panic also because they don't trust the technique and they really don't understand less is more. And so they do too much and then they don't get the results. And it's, you know, and I find that really, really sad. It
is interesting, isn't it? So let's just touch on one more thing, and then I think we should bring it to the close.
Certainly, my tea's nearly done.
Nearly done, yeah, exactly. So that brings it to intention. So some of my guys, when I'm teaching them to be their own therapist within MELT, and a lot of my guys have very complex mobility, can't always move in the way that they would need to do the movement that we're asking for.
Right.
So what we sometimes do, and I'll do it in my Qigong classes as well, is we'll get them to intend the move, the intention. And I think that's quite interesting because I probably do a few more moves than you in a Bowen session now. Sometimes I don't.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the intention comes into play as well.
Absolutely.
So just asking, your thoughts on that.
So one of the CPD courses I teach is actually called The Cobbler's Children.
Oh, I loved that one.
Which is, it's a formal title because cobbler's children are always the ones with the holes in their shoes.
Absolutely.
And as therapists, we are normally the ones that don't actually get any treatment.
Either for ourselves or for our husbands. Stuart, as you know, is always growling at me because his shoulders are wonky and then he wants a Bowen and then it never happens.
Yeah. So it's called Go On, Treat Yourself, in brackets, The Cobbler's Children. But that is really very much, I don't want to say too much about it because it's just going to not confuse people, but if they're not a Bowen therapist, it won't be helpful. But, you know, when we're doing a Bowen move, you're very much focusing on the muscle and how it's going to move and how it should move and could move. So you really, when you're doing the move itself, you are focusing and using your intention to have that fluidity. And I find for myself, you know, it's a little bit like we were talking about the sleep meditation. It's a visualization. If you like, it's about having the intention. And it's not just the intention to sleep. It is a visualization. But I think intention is key. You know, I can turn my head, that's as far as it wants to go today with a bit of a crack. If I think about being able to look right over my shoulder, and that is genuinely as far as my neck goes. It's probably a bit dodgy because I haven't done this, but anyway. But if I think about being able to look behind me, and then I do that again, and I'm now really focusing on that, and you can see that I automatically go further. And you can try it. You know, sit where you're sitting, turn your head, see what you can see behind you, come back, intend to turn further. Don't hurt yourselves. You know, you're doing it within your comfort zone and you will find that you have a greater range of movement. So like you were saying, if you use intention with your MELT or your Qigong, and if your intention is to move the body in a certain way, just the fact that you're focusing on it will probably allow you to do that.
Absolutely.
It's key.
It is, absolutely. Gosh, there's so much more we could talk about, but I'm going to stop because we could
for hours.
We could witter for hours. I mean, that my brain was going into sensation conversation there, but let's just not even do that one. So, are you still teaching, Bowen? I'm not teaching canine anymore. Are you still teaching human Bowen?
It's a really good question. That is it is the multi-million-dollar question. I have paid my teaching license fee for this year, which takes me through to September. So I will teach some courses. I was teaching a basic course, but I didn't have enough bums on seats. And I kind of wonder whether that's the universe saying it's time to hang up your gloves.
Hang up your gloves.
So the jury is still kind of out because people keep trying to persuade me not to give up and twisting my arm.
It's tough. It's tough to find a decent human trainer nowadays. People ask me all the time, and I probably, as this is about to be on the public domain, I'm going to keep my mouth shut. But yeah, it's tough to find practitioners. So tell me about how people can find you if they want you as a practitioner.
Okay, so I work in the New Forest, and when I'm in the forest, which is where I live, I'm right on the south coast, so I tend to see people up the M3 corridor, because I can do that en route somewhere, or in the forest I will go via them on my way somewhere, or you know, that sort of thing. And rather like Tom Bowen used to treat on a bed when he first started out, because he didn't know therapy tables existed, I go to people's homes and I treat them on their bed. I do not take a therapy table with me. You're more comfortable and more likely to relax on a bed anyway, so it's all good. I also still run my clinic in London, which I do from a friend's house in Ealing, W5. We could actually, I've got a digital business card which has the gut health side of stuff, and it's also got a free health quiz on it. So if people want to do the free health quiz, they're very happy to do that, and I'll take them through their results as well. Just because I think, you know, knowledge is power. So we could pin that below if you like.
Okay, marvellous. And you do Zoom as well?
I do do Zoom for the EmoTrance, the Ask and Receive and the Super Connect. And I will, if I'll either do phone or Zoom if people want to follow up health doobry.
Marvellous. Thank you. Is there anything else, any pearl that you want to give anyone, or do you feel like we've done a good
less is more. Pause. Pain is never good. A lot of people think it ain't gonna do anything if it doesn't hurt, and it's balls.
Rubbish. So isn't that interesting?
Oh, well, it's melt balls.
So what's quite funny, isn't it? So all my melters, what are the sayings in melt? Do not cause pain to get out of pain. Get in, get out. So that would be less is more, really, wouldn't it? Yeah. And you're in charge of the level of compression. Absolutely. Yeah. So this is one of the reasons why melt was what shouted at me when I was looking at changing the way that I worked with people. The other thing I have to tell you, because most of you guys know this is the lady, because I know many of you are grateful for this saying, that gave me the let's just move our extra beautification. So I was actually a bit smaller when I did my Bowen training. I think. Yeah, I was smaller. So I think you did sort of talk about.
Most of us ladies all have extra beautification.
Yes, indeed. So this is where it came from. So you can thank Nick for that, not me. I've stolen it, as you all know. It's mentioned nearly every single class, isn't it? So,
but it's true.
It's true.
And I think language is really important, and that's another whole subject. But you know, if you call it fat,
it's fat.
I know, but a lot of people have issues around the word fat, and then they feel small and they feel devalued either by themselves or someone else. If you call it, and it is beautiful. If you do a dissection course, oh my God, the fatty tissue it glistens and it's almost highlighter yellow, and it is so beautiful. I can't tell you. So extra beautification kind of sums it up.
Oh,
and it's glorious.
I love that. That's a brilliant
It really is glorious.
Oh, Okay, and that is just so the perfect place to end this chat. Thank you, Nick, for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's such a treat to see you. It's been way too long.
Gorgeous.
We'll try and not make it so long.
Okay, we will. I'll crash her into a class, and I'll have to staple her mouth shut so that she focuses, because she does like to get involved. So I do have to stop her.
Probably.
You know what I'm like. I do tell you all off. So anyway, have a glorious week. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll make sure I put all of Nicola's wonderful bits and bobs in the bottom of our podcast, so you can have a look at them.
Any questions? Shout.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.